I'm talking about offline is the new black. My name's Max, in case you don't know me. You can follow me on Twitter. Please tweet any questions, comments, or feedback you have, or submit it on the website. I heard you can do that. I don't actually know if it works. LMXSDBR is my Twitter handle anyway. I come from Austria, which is quite cold right now, but not as cold as Tallinn is. And it's not very far away. I work as an open source developer at ThinkMill. Sorry? No, I'm from Vienna, actually. Sorry. I work as an open source developer at ThinkMill. ThinkMill, we're a full stack JavaScript agency. That means we use Node.js on the back end and tons of React and React Native on the front end and the mobile, respectively. And ThinkMill is based in Australia. Okay, and I want to just clear this up because I'm from Austria. Austria and Australia are not the same country, all right? You'd be surprised how often I say, hey, I'm from Austria, and people come and say, good day, mate, how are the kangaroos? And I'm like, no, there's no fucking kangaroos in Austria, okay? Just shut up. Seriously, it happens that often. Anyhow, I'm an open source developer, meaning I just work on open source. I make Keystone.js, which is a Node.js content management system, or actually the Node.js content management system that you might have heard of. Based on that, I maintain Elemental UI, which is a React UI library that we built to build the Keystone admin interface with. If you're into React, I'm giving another talk tomorrow afternoon about scaling React apps. So if you're into that, come tomorrow. Same room. And I also make React Boilerplate, which is one of the most popular React starter kits with over 10,000 stars on GitHub, which is quite a lot. In 2014, I went to Southeast Asia, right? And specifically, I went to Cambodia. Now, Cambodia is a country you think about so little that you didn't even notice that that isn't Cambodia. This is. So in Cambodia, I went to this nice little, this is actually Cambodia now, don't worry. In Cambodia, I went to this nice little island called Koh Rong, which is just off of the south coast. Koh Rong looks a bit like this when you zoom in, right? It's a harbor, it's got two rather small beaches, right? There's nothing much there, but it's beautiful ocean. It's always sunny, basically. You've got very nice people, and it's really, really far off from anything else, right? Initially, I went there and I wanted to spend like 3 days, right? I wanted to be there like 2-3 days, then go back and see the rest of Cambodia. I ended up staying 8 days, and I only left because I had a flight back home to Vienna, right? So this place is really nice. Koh Rong looks absolutely amazing. If you ever get a chance to go there, it's great. Like, I love Cambodia. It's literally, Koh Rong, it's literally a paradise on earth. There's one problem with Koh Rong, though, which is that you only have 2 hours of electricity per day, right? That's all the power Koh Rong gets. Because it's so far off of the coast, and Cambodia isn't quite the most developed country in the world, they don't have any power lines. So the only way to get electricity is via a generator. And you know, as a power generator, you need fuel, but fuel is quite expensive. So they only do it for like 2 hours in the evening when everybody cooks out like dinner, and that's it, right? The rest of the day, you just don't have any power. This also means that you only have 2 hours of network per day, right? That's all the internet Koh Rong gets, because there isn't a very good mobile data connection, and I didn't have a SIM card, so the only way to get a network connection was via a Wi-Fi. But Wi-Fi needs power, right? So without power, you don't have any network at all. And that's kind of annoying. So what everybody does is, on Koh Rong, the people go, and in the evening, right, you know there's 2 hours of network every day from 6 to 8 p.m., right? So at 6 p.m., everybody runs to the cafes, takes out their phones, first of all, talks to their family, right? But then what they do is they open like news articles, and they click on an article, and they think, oh, that sounds interesting. Screenshot the first page, scroll on, screenshot the second page, scroll on, screenshot the third page, close it, go to the next article. Oh, that sounds interesting. Screenshot the first page, scroll down, screenshot the second page, scroll down, screenshot, and so on and so forth, right? And they do that for 2 hours, and then the internet shuts off. And then from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., everybody's sitting there with their phones, just like going, reading the first page of an article, swipe to the next picture. Reading the second page of an article, swipe to the next picture, and so on and so forth. And then you have to delete all of those pictures, right? So that's the way you actually get the news in Koh Rong. This is not made up. This is literally what we do there. So we've all seen this thing before, which is the loading spinner of death, right? This endless cycle of waiting, where you just stare at it and you just go, oh my God, what is going on? In fact, when I go out of my apartment in Vienna, I live in a very old building, and it has very big walls. So when I go in the morning, right, I'm kind of tired, I go out of my apartment, and I go into the staircase. And the staircase is the oldest part of the building. It was built in like 1400 something. I don't even know exactly, right? It's really, really old. It's got like 3-meter walls. And I walk in, and I try to click on any link, it doesn't load. Like, I lose any sort of connection. So every morning, I try to remember it every morning, right? But I always forget. So I walk out of my apartment really sleepily, like trying to read the latest Medium rant or something, and I press on a link and suddenly it's just dead, and I just see a loading spinner. It happens to me every single morning, right? This isn't some problem that only people in Cambodia have. It's a problem that everybody has, because network coverage just isn't there yet, right? People sometimes tell me, we have 100% network coverage. I read that about some country that said, we have 100% network coverage. I highly doubt that. Like, getting to 100% network coverage would mean that every single centimeter of your entire country, in every single building, tunnel, or whatever, has network coverage. That's ridiculous. Like, it's never going to happen, right? And while we have good network coverage, it's still not there yet. And even if you have network coverage, sometimes the network is really, really slow and bad, like my roaming in Tallinn at the moment. There's a great article by the Hoodie team that sort of developed this offline first concept, where they have this great quote where they say geography is non-negotiable. Right? You can't argue with a mountain to move out of the way because you need to call your mom, right? The mountain's not going to move. You can't negotiate with geography. So we as web developers, and you as a web developer, you need to be there when your users need you, right? The web, in its essence, is just information. That's all the web is, right? All we're doing is just encoding information and sending it to somebody else, and then getting some information back maybe, right? That's all that happens. But information is only at the very most useful if it's there at the right time, right? If I take a look on my phone and I see, the train I needed to catch left 2 hours ago, that's really nice, right? At least I know I have to book a hotel or something. But it would have been much better if 3 hours ago I knew, hey, the last train to where you want to go leaves in an hour, right? Because then I could actually pack my stuff and go to the train station, right? Information is useful, but it needs to be there at the right time. Now, I'm not the first one to think of this problem, right? This isn't my invention or anything. So people went and created this thing called AppCache. AppCache was the very first sort of idea of adding offline support to websites and web apps. And it works in a way that you provide the browser with a list of files you should cache, and then the browser goes and caches those files, and when the user is offline and requests that URL, the browser just sends back those files, and whatever happens, happens. The problem is that AppCache is a douchebag. That's a quote by Jake Archibald, a Google engineer, who wrote this great article called AppCache is a douchebag about some of the pitfalls that AppCache has. The most famous one is that now, in computer science, right, we know there's two hard problems in computer science, right? Naming things, cache invalidations, and off-by-one errors, right? That's the two hard problems in computer science. Cache invalidation isn't easy, right? And so what AppCache does is, instead of checking if the files that the user got have changed, it checks if the list of files that it caches has changed, right? So the only way to get AppCache to download a new version of your app is to change the list of files that AppCache caches. Now, you can work around this by adding a comment of a timestamp or some sort of hash or something, right? Like, you can work around this, but you have to be aware of it. And AppCache has a bunch of pitfalls, which is why, Firefox very recently went, hey, OK, like, we're going to deprecate this on insecure regions, because on top of that, it has security issues, and we're probably going to deprecate it in the future totally. And then Chrome went, well, actually, that doesn't sound like too bad of an idea. Let's deprecate AppCache, And most of that just happened off of the back of a new spec that sort of got released, which is Service Worker. Now, contrary to AppCache, Service Workers don't do anything, right? They're a completely custom JavaScript file that you control. So you can have very, very custom offline behavior that your app needs really, really easily. For example, imagine a real-time game, right? For a real-time game, the AppCache behavior doesn't make any sense, right? Because you can cache all the file of the games, and it's going to render something, but you can't actually play because it's real-time, right? And so that's a horrible, horrible user experience, right? We don't want that. But with Service Worker, what you can do is you can display a message saying, hey, you're offline, right? The game right now doesn't work. But we have cached the leaderboard and your profile. So even if you're halfway around the world at a real-time game meetup, you can still show everybody how good you are without needing a network connection, right? For news sites, for example, if you read an article, that could be cached with the AppCache behavior, and we can very easily replicate that in Service Workers. Now, I built a very tiny website to showcase this, right? It's nothing fancy. It's literally just a page that you can go to. You can see the link down there. It displays a bit of text and a GIF. Nothing fancy going on here, right? So let's try to make this work offline with a Service Worker. So what we see here is our client, the user, and the server. And on the first request, everything happens as it normally would, right? The user requests a page. The browser goes to the server, says, hey, server, I need the page. The server goes, oh, yeah, I have some files for you, and sends over the files over to the browser. The browser then goes and parses, your HTML, your CSS, your JavaScript. And as it parses and executes the JavaScript, it passes what I like to call the magic line, navigator.serviceworker.register. And we'll get to that soon. But what the browser then does is it goes, oh, wait, I have to install a service worker. All right. So it goes and installs a service worker. Now, the thing is, this service worker, which intercepts every single network request that's outgoing from the browser to the server, is now completely in your hand. It's a JavaScript file, right? So you can essentially do whatever you want with it, which is great. And so what we're going to do is just replicate the AppCache behavior, right? We're going to take all the files we have and put them into a cache. And then the next time a user requests the same URL, the service worker is going to intercept the request. It's going to check with the cache, hey, cache, do we have files for that request? The cache is hopefully going to say, yeah, we do. And it's just going to send back the files. And the browser just displays the page without any need to go into any server or anything, right? Very basic, sort of replicating the AppCache behavior. What does that actually look like in code? So the first thing is the magic line. Ignore all of the, compatibility checks and stuff. This is what I want to showcase here. This is our JavaScript file. Somewhere in your JavaScript bundle, you have to have this navigator.serviceworker.register function. And you call it with a pass to a JavaScript file. And this JavaScript file isn't just some random JavaScript file. It's a JavaScript file that you wrote, right? So what does that look like? Well, let's take a look at the one I want to showcase. In our case, we have a cache name because you can have different caches. I just want to have one, so I hard-code it. And then I also hard-code the URLs to cache. You wouldn't have to do this, but it was the easiest way of doing it, so I did it this way. I just want to cache my HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, and the one GIF we have, right? That's everything. And then that's where it gets interesting, and that's where my alarm rings, because I got to wake up. I'm just kidding. So what you see here is we have an event listener. Now, all of service workers are based on event listeners because everything works asynchronously, right? A fetch request can come in whenever we want. Now, in this case, we're waiting for somebody to install this service worker. This event will get called when you call navigator.serviceworker.register. If somebody knows why it's called navigator.serviceworker.register, but the event is called install, you can please tell me afterwards, because I have no idea. So this is what gets called on navigator.serviceworker.register. So then we go, we open our cache, and then we just put all of the URLs that we want to cache into the cache, which will get all the files and stuff. It's a tiny amount of code for what we're actually doing, and it's pretty readable, pretty nice, right? Nothing much going on. We're using promises. So actually, that's one of the downsides of service workers. They use promises throughout their entire API, meaning they're only supported on browsers that support promises, right? Makes sense. So we'll get to compatibility later, but that has some downsides. So we've now cached all of our files. This was done on the first request. That's a global variable. Oops, sorry. That's a global variable that you can just use in your service worker files. Yeah, so there's a bunch of them. That's basically it. The next event is a bit more interesting, which is the fetch event. So whenever a network request comes from the browser, this will get called. It doesn't matter if it's an AJAX request or if it's the first request or whatever. Everything goes through this event, right? And what happens is we get this event, and we just go event that respond with and try to match the request that we got. And then our cache can say, hey, I've got files for this request. Let's just return them, right? That's it. And our user already has all the files they need, right? That's it. Now, if we don't have the files, what we need to do is just refetch the files that we need, right? So what we do is we clone the request, because you can only use requests once. And then we just fetch the same request that the browser just dispatched. And when we get a response, if it's an error response, we don't really want to cache it, right? You don't want to cache error responses, because then every time a user visits a page offline, they're going to get an error. That's not the point of it. So if it's an error response, we just directly send it to the user and go, hey, user, there's an error with your request, and let the application handle it. On the other hand, if there isn't an error, what we do is we clone the response, because responses are also read-only ones. And then we open our cache, pull all the files into the cache with the request that we got, and then return the response to the browser. What does this look like? So if we open our page again, if we go to airplane mode, because I want to showcase that we didn't have any connectivity whatsoever. We can go to the browser, visit the previously visited URL, and surprise, surprise, everything still works, because we've got everything cached offline. Now, to show that we're really offline, I'm going to try opening another page. It's a great page, by the way, mxsdbr.com. If you don't know it, it's the best page ever. Sadly, I can't show you. I'm going to play a bit of the Dino game, because that's really nice, right? If you didn't know this, it's pretty amazing. Whenever you're offline, just click on the Dino, and you can play this lovely little game. Sadly, I suck at it. So the point is, we're really offline here, right? So our page still works perfectly fine. Now that's great. This is basically what Service Worker does. There's this great resource by Mozilla called the Service Worker Cookbook at serviceworker.rs. You see the URL down there. And they provide you with sort of recipes for service workers, right? So they have everything from really basic, just cache 2 files and send them back to the user, to things like the request deferrer, which caches all the requests that come in when you're offline, and then replays them to the server and returns a fake response, and all that sort of crazy stuff. They all have it. It's a really, really good resource to check out what you can actually do, like what's possible with service workers. It's pretty amazing. There is a downside, as I mentioned, compatibility isn't very big. So this is still a bit red. If you take a look at it from the usage, relative perspective, it looks a bit better, but it's still not perfect. That's because they need promises and the fetch API, which not all browsers have yet. Who in here has heard of the UC browser for Android? Just raise your hand. It's like 3 people in here, 4 people in here. As you can see, millions of people are using it in China, right? I'd never heard of that browser. I have no idea it existed, right? But apparently it's huge in China, and everybody there uses it for some reason. So test your websites on UC browser because it's got some weird compatibility issues. Nice little tidbit there. As you can see, it's not very well supported yet, which is, a problem, but you can always fall back to AppCache. There's a bunch of tools like SW, I think it's Toolbox that gives you sort of AppCache behavior and AppCache fallbacks for browsers that don't support service workers yet, which is really nice. And then there's another thing, which is the manifest file. Now, we've got an offline app right now, right? We've got our website is fully offline, right? People can load it and visit it wherever they are. But we kind of want to have, some sort of native app-like behavior, right? To truly have native app-like behavior, we need to be on the home screen of users, right? Our websites need to live right there next to the apps, not just in the browser. Now, since Chrome 31, I think, so for a while, Add to Home Screen has been supported. It's been in iOS for ages. And since Chrome 39, they have this thing called a manifest file, which is just a manifest file. It's a JSON file that you can put some stuff in, right? So you just put it into HTML, you say link relation equals manifest, and point to some JSON file. And in that JSON file, you can tell Chrome what to do once your site is added to the home screen. So in our case, what we're going to do is we're going to give it the name of demo app, because it's not, that's the name. You can provide icons which will be displayed. Now, this is an array of icons because you can have icons for different sizes, right? So because we have so many mobile phones with so many different resolutions, you might want to provide big icons for high resolution phones and small icons for smaller resolution phones. You can do that here. That's perfectly fine. I didn't do it because I didn't care because it's just my phone. The start URL is index.html, which is just the URL that's going to get displayed at the start. We want it to be displayed as standalone, and we will see very soon what that looks like. And we want the orientation to be portrait because our app isn't landscape or optimized, so just make it portrait, it doesn't matter. What does this look like? Well, if users now go into Chrome and they open the web page, they can click on this Add to Home Screen thing, which will give them a prompt to add the website to the home screen. And as you can see, we've got our icon, we've got our name, everything works perfectly fine. And now when they press add, what happens is it gets added to the home screen, surprisingly. So if we go back to the home screen, what you'll see there is this new icon, just like any other app I have. And now it's there on the home screen, and I can click on it. And what you'll see is a very nice little splash screen. That's automatically done. You can control what it looks like. From the manifest file. So it looks like an app, like there's nothing different, there's no difference to an app, right? It's even in the task switcher, so you can close it like any other app, which is pretty cool. This is still just the same website, right? There's nothing fancy going on here. It's just the same website with a manifest file, which is pretty amazing. And because we have service workers, it's also offline, meaning it really, really behaves like a native application. Yeah. Basically, I just open it in offline mode, right? I go to airplane mode. Because we have the service worker, that still works, right? So we can click on it. Obviously, it works. Nothing fancy going on here. You can refresh it and do all sorts of stuff. So essentially, the main thing I want you to take away today from this talk is learn about service workers and use them for your applications because they're not that hard to use. Right? And they give your users a lot of benefit, right? Because all the information you have on your websites is fully offline. And then you can use manifest files to really make it seem like an app, right? Like a native app, but you don't have to. Just like cache basic things, cache the articles so people don't have to screenshot them on Corong, and then you're perfectly fine, right? Thank you very much for having me. That was a very quick run through to get you to your beer. If you have any questions, we definitely have time for that. And yeah, questions and comments, very much appreciated. Thank you. Any questions? If you ask a question now, everybody's going to hate you for keeping you from the beer. There's a question. So you know who to beat up later, right? He's standing in between your beer and you now. No, sorry, I'm just kidding. No, you don't have any DOM access. So whatever you do is you can send messages back and forth. So your application can communicate with the worker thread via messages, and you can react on your application based on that. So you can have things like the service worker telling the application, hey, it's offline, or hey, there's low connectivity, or all that sort of stuff, but you cannot access DOM or anything. That's part of the worker spec, I'm pretty sure. So you can have web workers, which are just background threads, and it's the same thing. The service worker just has access to cache APIs. So you can just communicate back and forth just like you would with a web worker. Oh yeah, and another thing actually that I forgot to mention is service workers can only be used on HTTPS because they're a huge security risk, right? Like what you're basically doing is having a man-in-the-middle attack on your own website, right? So if that was allowed on insecure regions, that would be a huge problem. So it's only on HTTPS, which you should be using anyway. Any other questions? There was something over there? He'll pass. He doesn't want to, anger everybody. All right then, I guess that's it. Thank you very much for having me. Enjoy your beers.